They warned her. If he ever comes knocking, don't open the door, not even if the devil himself is behind you. But Evelyn opened it anyway, because her baby was dying, and sometimes you have to choose the devil to fight death, the wind was vicious that night, carrying the taste of rain and something darker, like sorrow wearing a mask of dust. Evelyn May Carter pressed her trembling hand against her baby's burning forehead. Jonah whimpered in her arms, his little chest rattling with every breath, each one weaker than the last. The old cabin creaked around her, fire down to embers, shadows long and cold on the wooden floor. Outside, the prairie stretched for miles in all directions. No neighbors, no help, and no miracles. Jonah's fever had raged for 2 days now. His skin was pale, lips dry, and eyes unfocused. Evelyn had tried everything. Herbs, cool cloths, even whispered prayers she didn't believe in anymore. Nothing was working. She'd buried too many things in her 26 years. Her parents, her little brother, her pride, and maybe her husband too. Thomas Carter had gone missing 6 months back on a cattle run toward Kansas. Folks said he was gone for good, but she kept hoping, kept waiting. But now, hope felt like a cruel joke, and just as she whispered, "Please, God, anything, just don't take him too," the wind stopped, like the world was holding its breath. Boom, 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 ah, slow knock at the door, not frantic, not polite, just heavy, purposeful. Midnight. Evelyn's heart stopped. No one came to her cabin this late, not unless they were lost or dangerous. She moved to the window, pulled back the curtain just enough to see the figure, standing on her porch. A tall man in a duster coat, hat pulled low, soaked in rain and shadow. A stallion stood behind him, black as night and still as stone. Then she saw it, the metal glint of a revolver on his hip, the scar running from his cheekbone to his jaw. Her breath caught. Jace Colburn. Every saloon story in the county had his name whispered like a ghost. A wanted man, a feared outlaw. Some said he killed with a smile. Others swore he never smiled at all. The poster in Dry Hollow said $3,000 dead or alive, but folks added, "If you're smart, don't try either." He raised his head slowly, eyes like dying embers beneath that hat brim. "I heard the baby," he said, voice like thunder rolling across dry land. "Let me in. He ain't got till morning." Evelyn's hands trembled on the doorframe. Everything in her said no. But Jonah whimpered again, a soft, dying sound, and something inside her broke. She unlatched the door. Just a crack. "Why would a man like you care if my baby lives or dies?" she asked. Jace didn't blink. "Because once, someone let me die," he said. "I ain't never forgotten the sound." Then he looked down at Jonah, and for the briefest moment his expression cracked, like maybe, just maybe, this feared outlaw had once been someone's baby too. If this story has your heart racing already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the rest. You won't believe what's coming next. Rain tapped against the roof like nervous fingers. The door creaked, wider as Evelyn stepped back, holding Jonah close to her chest. The outlaw stepped inside slowly, bringing with him the scent of wet leather, gunpowder, and something older, like blood that had dried a long time ago but never really left. Jace. Colburn didn't glance around, didn't flinch at the crying child, nor at the trembling woman. His eyes went straight to the fire pit, then to the boy. "You got laudanum?" he asked. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. "Just a few drops left." "Get it, and heat some water. Fast." She moved like a ghost, torn between obedience and fear. She didn't trust him, not for a second. But somehow, she believed him. Jace knelt beside the fire, pulling something from inside his coat. Small leather pouches, folded cloth, a tin flask, and a worn-out wooden cross on a string. He placed them all down like a ritual, then pulled the pistol from his hip and laid it flat on the floor beside him. I ain't gonna hurt you, he said without looking at her. If I wanted to, that door wouldn't be on its hinges. The truth in that made Evelyn shiver. She poured water into the kettle and set it over the embers. Jonah whimpered again, his tiny body convulsing with a weak cough. Evelyn sat beside him, brushing sweat-matted curls from his forehead. Her hands were shaking. Jace leaned closer, unbothered by the fevered heat. How long he been burning? 2 days, maybe more. I lost track. He nodded grimly. Could be lung rot. Could be blood poisoning. You hear a rattle yet? Tonight, she whispered, voice breaking. He met her eyes for the first time. Not cruel, not soft, just real. Then, we ain't got time to talk. Jace pulled out a blade. Evelyn jumped. He paused. For the poultice, not for you. I gave you my word, Miss Carter. How do you know my name? She asked, narrowing her eyes. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crushed herbs in a cloth, adding drops from his flask. The sharp smell of alcohol filled the cabin. I knew your husband, he said finally. Thomas Carter. We rode together once. Her breath caught. You knew Thomas? He nodded, but something flickered. In his eyes, pain, maybe, or guilt. He never told me about you, she said, voice cold. He wouldn't have. She looked down at Jonah. Is he alive? Jace looked at the child. Right now, this boy is. It wasn't an answer. Not really. The kettle hissed. Jace grabbed it with a cloth, poured the hot water over the herbs, stirred, then carefully dabbed the mixture onto Jonah's chest. The child flinched but didn't cry. He was too weak. You believe in mercy, Miss Carter? Jace asked suddenly. Evelyn blinked. I believe in desperation, and that's what this is. He didn't argue, just kept working. Movements precise like a man who'd done this before. Too many times. Then, in the silence, Jonah let out a sharp gasp, followed by a deep, rattling cough. Jace leaned in close, listening. Good, he's fighting back. Evelyn covered her mouth, tears slipping from her eyes. Is it working? Too soon to tell, Jace muttered. But he's got more fight in him than most men I've buried. Her gaze drifted to the pistol, on the floor. What are you really doing here, Jace? He looked at her then. No lies in his face. I came to pay a debt. The storm hadn't stopped. Thunder rolled in the distance like cannons across forgotten battlefields. But inside that dim cabin, time moved differently. Jonah had coughed himself into a light sleep, and the only sound now was the sharp crack of firewood and the clink of Jace's flask against metal. Evelyn sat near the rocking chair, eyes red, hands folded tight in her lap. Her baby was still, burning up, but he was breathing. That was more than she'd had an hour ago. She studied the man now seated across the room. Jace Colburn looked as out of place in a child's sick room as a rattlesnake in a church pew. And yet, he hadn't flinched once. You said you owed a debt, Evelyn finally said. To who? My husband? Jace didn't look up. He was busy cleaning his blade with a piece of torn linen. Not to your husband, she frowned. Then what are you doing here? He set the blade down gently. Riding west, trying to outrun. Ghosts. That's vague, she muttered. I'm a vague man. Evelyn's jaw tightened. My baby's life hangs on the mercy of a man who won't give a straight answer. Forgive me if I want to know who the hell you are. Jace stood and walked to the window. The rain had eased, but the night was still thick and black. He spoke without turning. 2 years ago, I was bleeding out in a ravine north of Yuma. Bullet through the side. Done for. A woman found me. Didn't know my name. Didn't ask. Just took me in, stitched me up, and disappeared by dawn. His fingers tapped the wooden frame. Didn't take my gun. Didn't run for the sheriff. Just saved me. And you think that was me? Evelyn asked. No, he said, but the world don't get many like her. Or you. Evelyn looked at Jonah's pale face, the rise and fall of his chest. And what happened to her? She left me a note, Jace said. Said, save someone else. That'll be enough. His voice dropped low. I've been looking for a reason to listen ever since. The silence hung thick between them, broken only when Jonah stirred and coughed again. Evelyn rushed to him, cradling his body, rocking gently. His skin still burned, but his breathing sounded stronger now, less fragile, less final. Jace walked over and knelt beside them. Let me see. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. He placed his hand gently over Jonah's chest, felt the breath, closed his eyes like he was listening to something deeper than just lungs and fever. Then he opened them and whispered, he'll make it through the night. Evelyn's eyes welled again, but she held it in. Thank you, she said softly. Jace shook his head. Don't thank me yet. She looked at him, confused. Why not? He stood, walked back to the table, picked up his pistol, and loaded it. Evelyn tensed. What are you doing? I told you I was running from ghosts, he said quietly. Turns out they weren't far behind. He cocked the gun. They're coming, Miss Carter, and they're not just after me. Evelyn stood still as stone. Jace had just loaded his pistol and declared that someone was coming. Not just for him, but possibly for her too. She clutched Jonah tighter. Who's coming? Jace didn't answer right away. He peered out the window, rain still dripping from the roof's edge. Riders. 3, maybe 4. I saw them cut across the ridge at dusk. Too far to be neighbors, too close to be passing through. You led them here, she whispered, heart pounding. Jace turned, slow and sharp. No, they were already headed this way. I just got here first. But why? Her voice cracked. Why would strangers be coming for me? His jaw tensed. That's what I'm trying to figure out. He tossed her a small revolver wrapped in oiled cloth. She caught it clumsily. I've never fired one. You'll only need one shot. Aim for fear. I thought you came to help, she said, voice breaking. I did, but help don't always. Come with clean hands. Just then the fire flickered unnaturally. A heavy gust slammed the shutters. Both of them turned to the window and froze. A man stood just outside, tall, cloaked in a duster, his face hidden in the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. His silhouette was motionless, like a carving in the night. Evelyn gasped. How long's... He'd been standing there, but before Jace could answer, there was a knock. Not wild, not urgent, just 3 soft knocks, like the kind Jonah had given on Jace's door years ago, when the world hadn't yet broken either of them. Jace stepped forward, gripped tight on his revolver. Stay back, he told her. Evelyn didn't move. She stared at the door like it might explode open at any moment. Jace Colburn, came a voice from outside, deep, smooth, and slow. Ain't you tired of running? Jace's entire body went rigid. Evelyn saw it. Who is that? He didn't blink. His name's Cyrus Vale, used to be a preacher. Now he preaches with bullets. Another voice chimed in, this one sharp and mocking. And we ain't just here for Colburn. We want the lady, too. Evelyn's breath caught. Jace spun to her, eyes dark. What did Thomas get you into? What are you talking about? She said, stunned. My husband was a ranch hand. Quiet, simple. He never... Jace's voice was hard. He lied to you. What do you mean? He lowered his voice. Your husband wasn't just a rancher. He was a courier for Cyrus's gang. He ran secrets, maps, codes. And one day, he disappeared. Took something with him. Evelyn's head reeled. No, he died in a storm. That's what the marshal said. He drowned crossing Devil's Creek. Jace looked her in the eye. That's what they wanted you to believe. Suddenly a bullet shattered the window, whizzing past them and lodging in the wall. Evelyn screamed, shielding Jonah. Get down! Jace roared, dragging her to the floor. The baby wailed, confused and terrified. Jace returned fire through the window once, twice, then ducked. They're trying to scare us. Test the edges. They don't know if Thomas's secret is still in this house, Evelyn whispered, dazed. What secret? Jace looked toward the fireplace. His eyes locked onto the loose floorboard beneath the rocking chair. Only one way to find out, he muttered. Gunpowder still hung in the air. Jonah had cried himself to sleep again, wrapped tight in Evelyn's arms as she sat trembling beside the hearth. Every creak of the wind outside felt like a footstep. Every shadow twitched like it knew something they didn't. Jace stepped toward the rocking chair, slowly, cautiously. His boots thudded against the wooden floor as he knelt, brushing. Aside the woven rug, beneath it, just as he'd guessed, a loose board. He looked back at her. You ever notice this? She shook her head. Thomas used to sit here, rock for hours while Jonah napped. I thought it was just grief. Jace pried the board loose with his knife. The wood groaned like it was hiding something that didn't want to be remembered, and it was. Inside the narrow compartment was an old leather pouch, water-stained and cracked. Jace opened it carefully, revealing a stack of folded papers, a rusted locket, and a small ivory-handled key. He unfolded one of the pages, and his eyes scanned quickly, then froze. What is it? Evelyn asked. He handed her the paper. Her hands shook as she read the faded ink. Safe house locations, dates, names, all in code. Jace nodded. Encrypted drop points. This ain't just outlaw stuff. This is organized military-level planning. He was running intelligence for someone big. Your husband was in deeper than you knew, Evelyn's voice cracked. Why would he keep this here? Why not burn it? Because it was leverage, Jace said. He was planning to disappear, not die. Evelyn stared at the locket. Her trembling fingers opened it, revealing 2 photos. One of Jonah as a baby, and the other, her eyes widened. That's not me, she whispered. Jace looked closer. The woman in the photo wore a violet dress, hair pinned high in an Eastern style. Elegant, unfamiliar. That's Clara Hensley, he muttered. She was the banker's daughter in Elmsworth. Went missing 3 years ago. Folks thought she ran off. What does she have to do with Thomas? I don't know, Jace said. But this proves your husband was playing 2 lives, one with you and one that got him killed. Evelyn's throat tightened. Her whole world was shifting beneath her. Then they heard it, a horse's whinny. Close. Too close. Jace moved to the window again and peeked through the corner of the cracked shutter. They're circling, he said, trying to draw us out. Evelyn looked down at Jonah. His fever had eased, but he was still pale and weak. We can't run, she said. He won't survive the cold. We won't run, Jace said. We make our stand here. He loaded the last of his bullets into the chamber, then glanced back at her. I need to know. Are you ready to learn the rest? About your husband, about what he might have stolen, and what it means for your boy. Evelyn stood slowly, the revolver. Jace had given her still in her hand. I wasn't ready for any of this, she said, but I'm still here. Jace gave her a rare nod, not pity, not protection, respect. The door rattled again, this time louder, followed by a voice. Open up, Miss Carter. We just want to talk about what your man left behind. Evelyn turned. To Jace. They know my name. Jace's jaw tightened. They know more than that. The wind howled as if it knew the danger was close. Inside the cabin, silence fell heavy, thick with fear and unspoken truths. Evelyn stared at the door, still trembling from the voice that had spoken her name. Jace moved swiftly. He slid the latch across, grabbed a second rifle from behind the wood pile and cocked it. They know too much, he muttered. We're out of time. She took a breath. Why do they want me? They don't want you, Evelyn. They want what Thomas left behind, and they think you might know where it is. I don't, she whispered, holding Jonah tight. I didn't even know he was hiding something. They don't care. He paused. They just want what he took, and they'll burn this house to the ground to get it. Another knock. This time the voice was closer, colder. Jace Colburn, you got 10 seconds before we come in and take the woman ourselves. Jace stepped back from the window. They'll try to smoke us out. Then what do we do? Evelyn asked, panic rising in her throat. Jace looked at her, eyes firm but not cruel. We fight smart. We buy time, and we hope to God that whatever your husband buried is enough to scare them off. He opened the hidden compartment again and lifted the pouch. Beneath it, another scrap of paper had slipped down, folded tight. He opened it slowly. It was a map, hand-drawn, crude, with one word scribbled on the back, Whistler's Hollow. Evelyn gasped. That's just west of town. There's nothing out there but bones and wind. Jace nodded. Exactly, which makes it the perfect place to hide something. Before they could speak further, a torch hit the porch, burning oil licking the boards. Smoke curled under the door. They're not waiting anymore, Jace said grimly. Evelyn moved fast, grabbing the small quilt from the chair and dousing it in water to block the gap under the door. Jace pulled her aside. Listen to me. When I say run, you take the back exit through the barn and you don't look back. And you? I'll keep 'em busy. If I'm lucky, I'll be right behind you. No, she said, voice sharp. We go together. You've got a child. In your arms, I've got bullets. That makes us different kinds of useful right now. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded, heart pounding. Then suddenly, a crash. The front door burst inward, and a man stepped into the smoke-filled cabin. He was tall, wide-shouldered, with silver in his beard and cruelty in his eyes. A scar ran down the side of his cheek like a lightning bolt. Cyrus Vale. Well, well, he drawled. Ain't this cozy? Jace raised his rifle. Not another step. But Cyrus just smirked. You're brave, Colburn. Brave and stupid. That boy's daddy owed me something, and I'm here to collect. He looked at Evelyn. Your husband was a liar, a thief, and a traitor. You think that child of his don't carry some of that blood? Jace's voice cut like steel. That boy's innocent. Innocents don't run in bloodlines, Cyrus hissed. Neither does mercy. Jace fired back and pulled the trigger. The shot hit Cyrus square in the shoulder, sending him stumbling back with a howl. Go, Jace shouted at Evelyn. She bolted through the rear hallway, clutching Jonah, tears streaming, heart racing. Behind her, gunfire exploded like thunder, but just before she crossed the barn door, she looked back, and for a moment she saw Jace, facing 3 armed men alone. The snow outside the barn was ankle-deep, glowing faintly under the full moon. Evelyn stumbled through it, clutching Jonah to her chest, heart hammering in her ears. Behind her, the unmistakable crack of gunfire. 1, 2, then silence. No, she whispered, turning back, tears streaking her cold face. Please, no! The barn door creaked. She froze. But it wasn't the outlaws. It was Jace, bloody, limping, but alive. Smoke curled from his revolver, and his coat was torn at the shoulder. He reached her, eyes scanning her and Jonah quickly. You all right? She nodded breathlessly. You? Not dead yet, he grunted, clutching his side. But I winged 2 of them. Cyrus got away. He'll be back. And angrier. Evelyn looked toward the horizon. We can't stay. Not here. Jace nodded. We ride to Whistler's Hollow. Now. They saddled up the mare as fast as they could. Jace helped Evelyn onto the saddle, then mounted behind her, cradling Jonah between them, shielding the child from the icy wind. The ride was brutal. Cold slapped their faces. Trees blurred past like shadows of ghosts. Jonah whimpered once, then went quiet again. Evelyn looked back at Jace. You sure this place even exists? I'm sure your husband believed it did, he muttered. And if he trusted it enough to mark it on a secret map, then whatever's there, it's the key to everything. Hours passed like years. Then, through a break in the trees, they saw it. A stone archway, half buried in snow. Beyond it, ruins. An old chapel, long abandoned, its steeple snapped in half by time. They dismounted slowly. Jace handed Evelyn a lantern, then moved cautiously through the creaking gate. The silence was suffocating, like the land itself had secrets too old to speak. Inside the chapel, dust hung like fog. Broken pews, shattered stained glass, a rusted cross hanging sideways on the far wall, but in the center of the room, beneath the altar, fresh footprints. Evelyn froze. "Someone's been here!" Jace raised his rifle. "And recently!" They moved quietly toward the altar. Jace knelt, brushing aside the loose planks beneath it, and found a hatch, padlocked, ivory-handled. The key matched. Evelyn stepped back as Jace turned the lock and lifted the hatch. Ladder led into darkness. Jace looked at her. "You stay here with Jonah. I go first." "No," she said firmly. "We go together." He studied her for a second, then nodded. They descended slowly, the lantern casting long shadows across stone, walls. The air grew colder, heavier. At the bottom, a room, square, stone-lined, a table in the center, and on it, a chest. Jace approached it, breath tight. It wasn't locked. He opened it. Inside, bundled in oilcloth and rope, were documents, gold coins, and a journal. Evelyn picked up the journal. On the first page, in her husband's handwriting, "To Evelyn and my son, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And everything I did was to protect you." Her knees buckled. Jace caught her before she fell. Tears poured down her face as she whispered, "He didn't betray us. He was saving us." Jace looked through the papers, maps, account ledgers, records of names. His face darkened. "These are ledgers from the Vale Syndicate. Names of every bribe, every murder, every betrayal. Thomas stole their sins." Evelyn looked up. "Then Cyrus is after more than money." Jace nodded grimly. "He's after erasing this, because if this gets out," she finished the sentence, "he loses everything." Suddenly a noise above, boots on wood, voices. "They found us," Jace whispered. He grabbed her hand. "You ready to end this?" Evelyn wiped her tears. "For my son?" "Always." The faint sound of boots echoed through the chapel above, each step like a ticking clock. Jace motioned for silence, blowing out the lantern. Darkness swallowed the underground chamber, and the only sound left was Evelyn's heartbeat pounding. In her ears and Jonah's faint breathing against her chest, voices now, low, menacing. "They're down there," said a voice. "Cyrus wants the woman alive. Kill the outlaw." Jace's jaw tightened. He turned toward Evelyn, whispering low, "There's only one way out. Through them." Evelyn clutched the journal to her chest. "They can't get this, Jace. Promise." "Me." "I already promised your husband." They braced as the hatch above creaked open, moonlight spilling down the ladder. A pair of boots descended slowly, one of Cyrus's men, lantern in hand, pistol drawn. Jace waited in the dark, barely breathing. When the man's foot hit the ground, Jace struck. Quick, silent, brutal. He slammed the man against the wall, muffling his cry with his forearm until the body went limp. Evelyn covered Jonah's eyes. More voices above now, alerted. "Something's wrong." Jace grabbed the pistol from the fallen man and handed it to Evelyn. "You ever use one?" "I've had to," she said, steady hands taking the weapon. They waited. Then, a blast of dynamite. The hatch above shattered. The ladder collapsed. Rubble rained down. Dust filled the chamber. They were trapped. Jace shoved Evelyn to the ground, covering Jonah as debris flew past. When the dust settled, he coughed hard, rising slowly, ears ringing. They want to bury us in here, Evelyn whispered. Jace looked at the broken wall behind the chest. It wasn't just stone, it was loose earth. Help me, he said, grabbing a broken beam as a lever. There might be a way out behind here. They pushed, pulled. Sweat mixed with blood, and finally, a narrow tunnel, barely big enough to crawl through. Jonah whimpered, his fever rising again. Evelyn pressed her lips to his head, praying under her breath. Go, Jace said. I'll cover the rear. They crawled, dirt in their mouths, breaths shallow, each foot forward a battle. At the end, faint light, fresh air, they emerged behind, the chapel in the tree line. Snow still fell, but the dawn was breaking. Evelyn gasped as she saw it. Cyrus's men surrounding the front, torches lit, horses waiting. Guns drawn, but they didn't know the trio had escaped. Yet. Jace spotted a wagon near the tree line, left by one of the outlaws. We take it, and we run. No, Evelyn said, voice cold and sure. We don't run anymore. Jace turned to her surprised. She held the journal tightly. My husband died fighting these devils. If we keep running, they win. But if we get this to the right people, Jace finished, eyes lighting with purpose. We burn them down. Just then, Jonah stirred in her arms. His eyes fluttered open. Mama, he whispered weakly. Tears burst from Evelyn's eyes. She kissed his forehead. You're safe, baby. We're going to finish this. They climbed into the wagon, Jace snapping the reins. Hooves pounded against the snow as they disappeared into the trees. Behind them, the chapel smoldered in the distance, like a ghost fading in the morning light. But ahead, justice waited. The wagon wheels thundered across the frozen earth, wooden, spokes creaking with every turn. Evelyn held Jonah close, her shawl wrapped tight around his tiny body. His fever had eased, but his skin was still warm, too warm. Time was running out. Jace kept his eyes on the trail, guiding the horse toward a hidden pass through the hills. The sun was rising now, a pale fire behind gray clouds, and snowflakes still danced in the wind like drifting ash. We need to reach Bitter Creek by nightfall, Jace said. There's a doctor there, a good one. Evelyn didn't answer. She stared at the journal in her lap, the one her husband had hidden before he died. Inside, names were written in hurried ink. Some crossed out. Some circled, all tied to Cyrus Thorne. Who are they? She asked. Why were they paying Cyrus? Jace glanced at her, eyes shadowed beneath his wide-brimmed hat. Judges, sheriffs, land commissioners, every man with power in 3 counties. She swallowed hard. My husband was right. This isn't just corruption. It's a machine. Jace nodded. And your husband? He was the wrench thrown into it. That's why they killed him. The wagon turned onto a narrower trail. Trees thickened. Silence followed, save for the horse's breath and the crackle of distant frost. Then, from the woods, a single gunshot. The horse shrieked. Jace pulled the reins, but it was too late. The wagon veered sideways, one wheel snapping off. Evelyn screamed, shielding Jonah as the wagon tipped and crashed into the snow. Silence. Jace was the first to move. Blood trickled from his forehead, but his eyes were sharp. He crawled toward Evelyn, helping her up. You all right? She nodded shakily. Jonah, he's okay. Another shot rang out, this one closer. They were being hunted. Jace grabbed his rifle from the wreck and pulled Evelyn behind the overturned wagon. They followed our trail. Evelyn clutched the journal. We can't let them take this. Jace peeked over the side. Shadows moved in the trees. He aimed and fired. A cry echoed back. One down, but more came. 3 men now, dressed in outlaw. Black, but one wore a marshal's badge, crooked on his vest. That's Sheriff Deke from Granger's Hollow, Jace whispered. Didn't think he'd sell his soul, too. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. They're all in on it. As the outlaws closed in, Jace tossed a small pouch into Evelyn's hands. "What's this?" she asked. "Matches. Kerosene. If they get close, burn the journal." "No," she said firmly. "I'd rather die than let Cyrus win." Jace looked. At her, something shifting in his eyes. "You've got more fight in you than most men I've ridden with." Just then, another shot. This time it hit Jace in the arm. He fell back, gritting his teeth. Evelyn grabbed the rifle, firing blindly into the trees. She was trembling, but her aim was true. Another outlaw fell. Now only one remained, the crooked sheriff. He stepped into the open, smiling beneath his black hat. "Give it up, Missy," he said. "You've got nowhere left to run." Evelyn stood slowly, rifle raised. Then she said a name, one that made the sheriff freeze. "I know what happened in Bell Hollow. I know about Annabelle Tress, and I know what you did to her." His face paled. "How do you know that name?" "I didn't," she said, voice trembling with fury. "But the journal does." The sheriff lowered his gun just an inch. That was enough. Boom. Jace's shot rang out from the snow, catching the sheriff clean in the chest. He fell without a sound. Evelyn dropped to her knees beside Jonah, tears of relief falling freely. They were safe, for now. But Cyrus wouldn't stop, and neither would she. The wind howled through the narrow valley as Evelyn stitched up Jace's wounded arm with trembling fingers. They had taken shelter in a small, abandoned cabin deep in the hills. The fire crackled in the hearth, barely warming the freezing walls, but it was enough. For now, Jace sat with his shirt off, jaw clenched, blood staining the bandage. Jonah slept wrapped in blankets near the fire, his breath slow but steady. Evelyn kept glancing at him, every breath a small prayer. "You're lucky that bullet passed clean through," she said quietly. Jace let out a pained chuckle. "I've been lucky for years, just running out of it now." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "That sheriff, Deke, I knew he was dirty, but to think he'd follow Cyrus's orders to the grave." Evelyn wiped her hands and opened the journal again, pages stuck together with dried blood and time. "Deke wasn't just following orders," she said, her voice low. "He was hiding something." She pulled out a folded piece of paper, a letter tucked between the last few pages. It was written in trembling script. "If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. My name is Annabelle Tress. I was 17 when Sheriff Deke dragged me from my home on Cyrus Thorne's command. They said my father owed money. I never saw him again. I was sold to Thorns. Men. Used. Broken. Forgotten." Evelyn's eyes burned with tears. Jace stared at the fire, his voice barely a whisper. "I remember her name. We heard rumors in Elwood Gulch, but no one dared speak it twice. She wrote this before she hung herself in the thorn mines," Evelyn whispered. "She begged whoever found it to expose them. She hid it with my husband's journal." Suddenly, it all made sense. Ethan, her late husband, hadn't just been a whistleblower. He had found the women Cyrus destroyed, the graves, the secrets buried beneath his empire. Jonah whimpered in his sleep. Evelyn rushed over and held him close. His fever had broken, but he still needed the doctor in Bitter Creek. They couldn't stay hidden long. Just then, a knock. Evelyn froze. Jace sat up, hand reaching for his pistol. The knock came again. Slow, deliberate. Not a friend. Jace moved to the window and peeked out, and there he was, Cyrus Thorne, dressed in a long black coat, gloves, and a wide smile on his cruel face. Behind him, 5 riders on black horses stood still like shadows in the snow. Cyrus looked up toward the cabin and called out, voice calm like he owned the land beneath their feet. "Evelyn, I know you're in there. I only want to talk," Jace whispered. "He tracked us himself. That means he's desperate." Evelyn clutched the journal tight. "He wants this." She stood slowly, breathing hard. Jace grabbed her arm. "You go. Out there, you won't come back." I'm not hiding anymore. Evelyn walked to the door, paused, and then whispered to Jonah, "You're going to be all right. Mama's just going to talk." She stepped outside into the snow, rifle in hand. Cyrus smiled wider. "Brave little widow." "You killed my husband," she said, "and now you want to silence me." He shook his head. "I want to offer you a deal." But Evelyn cut him off, voice sharp as steel. "You're not the only one with secrets, Cyrus. And mine? They're going to bury you." His smile vanished. The wind picked up. The air shifted. Cyrus pulled a pistol from his coat and aimed it at her heart, but before he could fire, a second knock echoed from the trees. Another rider emerged from the shadows, tall, silent, and Cyrus's face went white. Jace stepped out behind Evelyn, confused. "Who the hell is that?" Evelyn didn't turn. She whispered, "Someone Cyrus buried years ago." And the stranger spoke one word. Her name. Annabelle. The snowfall quieted everything, but Evelyn's heart pounded like thunder. Cyrus Thorne's hand trembled as he stared at the figure on horseback. The outlaw's wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but not enough to hide those eyes, burning with memory and vengeance. "You?" Cyrus breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." The rider dismounted slowly, every movement deliberate, silent. Evelyn gripped her rifle tighter. "Who is he, Cyrus?" The outlaw stepped forward, eyes on the man who had once ruled this land, with iron and fear. Jace whispered from behind her, "That ain't no ghost. That man's alive, and Cyrus is terrified." The outlaw finally spoke. "Name's Elijah Crow." Evelyn's breath caught. That name, it was one Ethan had spoken only once, late at night, when he thought she was asleep. "If I vanish, tell Elijah. He'll know what to do." Cyrus's voice cracked. "I buried you, shot you twice and left you in the river." Elijah smiled, the kind that sent chills down even Jace's spine. "You should have made sure I stopped breathing." He turned to Evelyn. "Your husband saved my life, pulled me from the river, nursed me till I could walk again. He told me everything, the girls, the ledgers, what Cyrus did to the womenfolk of Elwood." Cyrus stepped back, but his men didn't. "Move!" Their hands hovered near their guns, but they were unsure. Cyrus no longer looked invincible. "I came to finish what Ethan started," Elijah said. Evelyn nodded. "Then let's finish it together." Jace leveled his gun. "We've got proof, witnesses, and one hell of a reason." But Cyrus had one last trick. He whistled sharply, and from the trees behind, a group of townsfolk appeared. Women, men, old, farmers, a preacher, Sheriff Deke's deputy, all with hands tied, muzzles of guns pressed to their backs. "You think I came unprepared?" Cyrus sneered. "I brought insurance." Evelyn's rage boiled over. "You're still using fear. Still. Hiding behind others." Cyrus grinned. "It's always worked before." But Elijah didn't flinch. "You're out of time." He tossed something into the snow at Cyrus's feet. It was a bundle of letters, pages from Ethan's journal, Annabelle's letter, and a small metal badge, the original Thorne family crest, stolen years ago from the courthouse vaults. Cyrus looked down and saw his own downfall in ink and steel. "They're already copied," Elijah said coldly. "Mailed to 3 counties and the governor's office. You try anything, they'll hang you before sundown." One of the gunmen lowered his weapon, then another. The spell was breaking. The truth was winning. Cyrus's smile twitched. He grabbed the closest hostage, a young boy, and pressed his gun to the child's head. "One more step and I paint this snow red." Evelyn raised her rifle, but her hands shook, not out of fear, out of fury. "You took my husband. You nearly took my son. You don't get to take one more." Behind her, Jace murmured, "Now." A shot rang out, not Evelyn's, not Elijah's. The boy dropped to the ground unharmed. Cyrus's gun clattered beside him, and Cyrus fell forward, a red bloom spreading through his coat. The deputy who'd once served Deke stepped out, smoking revolver in hand. Been waiting to do that for 10 years, Cyrus gasped, staring at the sky. You can't kill a legend. Evelyn leaned down, eyes burning into his. No, Cyrus, you don't die a legend. You die forgotten. And he did. The snow was crimson where Cyrus Thorne fell. For a moment, silence blanketed the ranch, as if the land itself was stunned that the devil had finally bled. Evelyn stood still, heart thudding in her ears. Her eyes drifted to the boy Cyrus had taken hostage. He was safe, holding his father's hand, tears in his eyes, but alive. She turned to Elijah. It's over. But Elijah didn't answer. He was staring off toward the tree line, body tense. Jace noticed it too. Why ain't he relaxin'? He just took down the king of Elwood. Elijah stepped forward slowly, his voice low, because Cyrus wasn't the only monster Ethan feared. Evelyn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. What do you mean? Elijah looked her dead in the eyes. Ethan once told me, if anything happens to me, don't look for Cyrus. Look for the one behind him. Jace stiffened. There's someone worse than Thorne? Elijah nodded. His name is Cole Maddox. The name dropped like a stone in the snow. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her rifle. Who is he? Elijah's jaw clenched. He's the one who taught Cyrus how to be cruel, ran guns through Texas, traded girls across borders, and he made a fortune off Elwood's silence. Jace's voice cracked. So Thorne was the face, but Maddox was the hand in the dark. Exactly, Evelyn whispered. Is he still alive? More than alive, Elijah said. He runs a private army in a canyon 3 days south of here, and he wants Jonah. Evelyn's breath caught. Why? Why Jonah? Elijah hesitated. Because Jonah is not just your son. Evelyn stared at him, a storm building in her heart. What do you mean? Elijah took out a small leather-bound notebook and handed it to her. This belonged to Ethan. He told me to give it to you only if things ever got this far. Evelyn opened the book with trembling fingers. Inside were pages of Ethan's tight handwriting, detailed notes, names, dates. But one sentence leapt off the page. If Jonah ever asks where he came from, tell him I chose to be his father, but he was born from vengeance. Her knees buckled. Jace caught her before she hit the snow. Elijah said, softly, Ethan found Jonah as a baby, outside a burning house in Canyon Hollow. The baby was the only survivor. That house belonged to Cole Maddox's mistress, someone he wanted erased. Evelyn felt the ground shift beneath her soul. So Maddox, he's looking for Jonah, to finish what he started. Yes, Elijah said, and now that Cyrus is dead, he'll come himself. Jace's face hardened. Then we don't run, we prepare. Evelyn closed the notebook. Her eyes, though red with tears, were sharper than ever. We fight. Just then, a distant thunder echoed in the wind, not from the sky, but from the south. Horses. Dozens. Elijah's hand went to his revolver. He's coming. Evelyn looked down at Jonah, who clutched her leg, staring out at the horizon with innocent eyes. Then she whispered to herself, more promise than prayer. You may have taken Ethan, but you won't take our boy. The sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over Elwood. Evelyn watched the southern trail, where distant dust clouds thickened. The sound of hooves grew louder, not in chaos, but with terrifying precision. They're not riding wild, Elijah said, narrowing his eyes. They're marching. Like soldiers, Jace whispered. The townsfolk had begun gathering near the ranch, news of Cyrus's fall spreading like wildfire. They came with pitchforks, rifles, trembling hands, and determined hearts. The town had been broken before, but now, with Evelyn and Elijah standing at the front, they had someone to believe in. Inside the house, Jonah sat beside the fireplace, fingers tightly curled around the small wooden horse Ethan had carved for him. He looked up at Evelyn as she knelt beside him. Mama, he whispered. Is the bad man coming? Evelyn held his cheeks gently, pressing her forehead to his. Yes, sweetheart, but your daddy once told me something. What? That a mother's love can hold off 1,000 men. Elijah entered, voice low. They'll reach town by morning. We've got hours, maybe less. Evelyn stood, her voice steady. Then we fight tonight. But before they could speak further, a knock echoed from the back door. Everyone froze. Jace crept to the window. One rider, alone. He opened the door with his gun raised and froze. The man was tall, gaunt, draped in a dark oilskin coat with a black hat shadowing his scarred face. His eyes were pale as ash, yet cold as death. I'm here, he said, because I owe Ethan Rhodes a debt. Evelyn's heart skipped. You knew Ethan? I bled for him, the man said. Name's Micah Rourke, and if you're defending this boy from Cole Maddox, you'll need more than prayers. Elijah's jaw clenched. Rourke, you're the man who vanished after the border massacre. I didn't vanish, Micah said, stepping inside. I went underground. Been tracking Maddox's moves for 2 years, and now he's coming straight for your doorstep. Evelyn stepped closer. Why help us? Micah looked down at Jonah. Because I was there the night that child survived. And I was the one who carried him out of that fire. Evelyn felt her breath stop. You saved Jonah? Micah nodded. I thought he died in the river. But Ethan found him, raised him. That makes you kin to the only decent man I ever knew. Jace finally spoke. Then let's give Maddox a welcome he won't forget. Outside, the town's old church bell rang. Not for a sermon, but for war. The old church bell rang through Elwood, like a thunderclap. Every strike echoed across the hills, waking dogs, babies, and memories better left buried. Evelyn watched from her porch, rifle across her lap, as lanterns lit one by one across the town. Doors opened. Men emerged, some young, some old, some limping from past wars, others trembling from the fear of a new one. But all came, not because they believed they'd survive, but because Evelyn Rhodes had stood for them when no one else did. Elijah stood beside her, polishing his revolver. They're coming for Jonah. You sure you're ready to die for him? Evelyn looked toward the barn, where her son slept under the watch of Jace and Micah. I'm not dying tonight, Elijah. Not until that boy grows up and buries me himself. He gave a soft smile. That's the Evelyn I remember. Behind them, an old man approached, Sheriff Keller. He hadn't worn a badge in years. It hung around his neck now like a noose. Never thought I'd hold a gun again, he muttered. But I reckon it's time I earned the title. Micah stepped out of the barn, dark and silent as ever. He handed Elijah a map. They'll come through Dead Hollow, he said. That canyon's a natural bottleneck. We hit them there, before they reach the town. Jace added, booby traps, firewalls, and shooters on the ridge. Evelyn nodded. Then we ride tonight. They gathered near the saloon, 25 strong, some with rifles, others with pitchforks and axes. Evelyn climbed atop a wagon and looked down at them, her voice sharp in the cold night. Cyrus Thorne ruled by fear. Cole Maddox hides behind blood and shadows. But we've got nothing to hide. This town's been bruised, beaten, and broken, but we're still breathing. And tonight we show that breath has fire. A roar erupted from the crowd. Micah grinned. You sure you ain't part outlaw? Evelyn looked to the horizon. I'm just a mother protecting her son. That night, Elwood rode out. Torches lit the trail. Horses pounded against frozen dirt. They reached Dead Hollow just before midnight, when the wind shifted and the first figures appeared at the edge of the trees, dark shapes, dozens. Then came the sound, steady, slow, terrifying. Drums, Micah whispered. Maddox is announcing himself. And then they saw him, atop a black horse dressed in silver buttons and a blood-red coat. His face was pale, lips twisted in a smirk, and at his side, a boy, tied, gagged. Jonah. Evelyn's world stopped. No, she breathed. Jace swore under his breath. How the hell did they— They never meant to attack the town, Elijah growled. They flanked the ranch. Micah's face turned to stone. This wasn't a battle. It was a distraction. Evelyn's knees almost gave way. Her boy, her baby. Maddox raised a hand and the drums ceased. He called out, voice cold as death. Evelyn Rhodes, if you want him alive, come alone. Evelyn's world narrowed to a single sound, her child's muffled cries echoing through the canyon. The wind stilled. The firelight from torches flickered like they too were afraid. She gripped her rifle tighter, jaw clenched. I'm going. Elijah grabbed her arm. You can't ride in there alone, it's suicide. She's right, Micah added, stepping forward. Maddox is baiting you. If you go, he won't trade. He'll bury you. Evelyn looked between them. Then you don't know what it means to be a mother. She threw her rifle to the dirt. He said, come unarmed. I'll go as I am. Jace growled. At least take a knife, Evelyn. She shook, her head. If I hide steel, Jonah dies before I get 10 steps. Micah's voice dropped low. You do this, there's no turning back. Evelyn looked him in the eye. There never was. She climbed onto her horse, bareback, no gun, no shield, just fear and love riding in her chest like twin pistons. Her boots dug into the animal's side, and it carried her toward the enemy without hesitation. Each hoofbeat echoed like a heartbeat. Behind her, the town stood frozen, watching the woman who once wept on their porches now ride into fire for a child who wasn't even born in their walls. Maddox watched her approach with that same eerie calm. His silver buttons glinted, and Jonah sat beside him, tied to the front of a wagon, eyes wide with tears. Evelyn dismounted, her boots sinking in the dust. Maddox, she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her spine. He smirked. You came quicker than I thought. You have my boy. What do you want? Maddox stepped forward slowly, circling her. It's not about what I want. It's about what Ethan took from me. She froze. You knew Ethan? Oh, I knew him. His eyes darkened. He stole something I needed, mercy, and in return, I took everything from him. Evelyn's breath caught. The fire. The night Jonah was found. I set that fire, Maddox said calmly. And I was there when Ethan pulled your son from the wreckage. I let him walk away, because I wanted to see what kind of woman would raise a boy marked by death. Evelyn's voice cracked. You're sick. No, darling. I'm Clarity. He pulled a revolver from his coat, cocked it, and pointed it to Jonah's head. And unless you tell me where Ethan's journal is, this little story ends now. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What journal? Maddox's smile faded. Don't play dumb. He hid it before he died. Names, locations, codes. I want it. Don't have it, she said truthfully. I didn't even know it existed. His eyes studied her. Then you're no longer useful. He turned the revolver. Jonah screamed, and suddenly, a bullet tore through the night and knocked Maddox's hand back. He screamed, gun flying from his grip. Micah emerged from the ridge with a long-barreled rifle still smoking. Told you not to go alone, Evelyn. The canyon exploded in chaos. The first gunshot was only the beginning. As Maddox howled in pain, clutching his bleeding hand, his men exploded from the rocks, rifles raised. The canyon that had been silent just seconds ago now roared with violence. Micah dropped behind a boulder, reloading fast. Evelyn, get to the boy! She didn't hesitate. Sprinting across the open dirt, she reached Jonah before Maddox's men could react. With trembling hands, she untied him, whispering, I've got you, baby. Mama's here. Jonah sobbed, wrapping his small arms around her neck. His body trembled, but he was alive. That was all that mattered. But they weren't safe yet. A bullet hit the ground near her feet. She ducked, shielding Jonah with her body, eyes darting for cover. Maddox's gang had the high ground, and Micah couldn't hold them all off alone. That's when the second miracle happened. From the eastern ridge came a thunder of hooves. Jace, Elijah, and nearly a dozen ranchers from Willow Creek charged in. Rifles blazing, their faces hard with fury and purpose. Evelyn couldn't believe it. The same townsfolk who once turned their backs on her were now risking their lives to save her son. Maddox, staggering to his feet, saw it too. "Fall back," he screamed. "Regroup at the second bend!" But it was too late. Jace rode straight toward him, tackled him off his feet, and the two tumbled into the dirt. A fistfight broke out, raw and brutal. Evelyn watched as Jace, fueled by rage and something deeper, slammed Maddox's face into the dust. "You come near them again," Jace snarled. "I won't stop at your hand next time." Gunfire began to fade. The last of Maddox's men were either fleeing into the rocks or lying face down in the dirt. Elijah disarmed the final one and tossed his pistol away. Silence fell again, this time with breathless relief. Evelyn cradled Jonah, tears falling freely as Micah approached, bruised and bloodied but alive. "It's over," he said softly. She looked up at him, face streaked with dust and tears. "You came. You all came." Micah knelt beside her. "He's not just your son anymore, Evelyn. He's ours. You reminded this town what it means to protect family." Jace stepped forward, still breathing hard. He knelt by Jonah and looked the boy in the eye. "You're safe now, little man." Jonah nodded slowly, then looked at Evelyn. "Mama, are we going home?" Her voice shook. "Yes, sweetheart, home." As the town gathered around them, torches lit and guns lowered, Evelyn knew something had shifted forever. They weren't outsiders anymore. They were part of something bigger. But Maddox wasn't dead, and the journal he wanted so badly still remained hidden. The sun was rising when Evelyn walked into her old cabin for the first time in weeks. Everything felt different. The smell of ash still lingered faintly, but Jonah's laughter echoed through the walls again. He sat at the table, sipping warm soup, while Micah mended a broken chair with his one good hand, a soft smile on his face. She stood at the threshold, watching them, the weight of the past few days still heavy on her shoulders. Then, she reached, beneath a floorboard, the one her late husband had always warned her never to touch. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was the journal Maddox had wanted. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The pages weren't filled with gold roots or outlaw confessions. They held something more dangerous. Letters, documents, and maps exposing corrupt dealings in several counties, names of lawmen bought by Maddox, and a plan to seize more land, starting with Willow Creek. Her husband had been gathering evidence, and paid for it with his life. Evelyn closed the book. She knew now why Micah had refused to take revenge blindly. This was bigger than just her family. It was justice, for her husband, for the town, for Jonah. Micah entered quietly behind her. "You found it," he said softly. She nodded. "What do we do with it?" "We give it to the marshals," he replied. "Let the truth do what bullets couldn't." Her eyes welled up. "You stayed, Micah, when you could have ridden off like before." He stepped closer. "I stayed because you and Jonah gave me something I didn't know I still wanted." He pulled out a small silver ring, worn, simple, and beautiful. "This belonged to my sister," he said. "She believed in new chances. So do I." Evelyn covered her mouth, stunned. "Micah, I ain't asking for forever right now," he said, voice thick. "Just for a place at your table, maybe a smile at the end of a long day. And maybe, someday more." Jonah peeked in. "Mama, is he gonna be my papa now?" She smiled, eyes full of tears. "I think he already is." Micah knelt and opened his arms. Jonah ran into them, burying his face in Micah's chest. Outside, the townsfolk repaired fences, rebuilt walls, and planted seeds in fields they once thought lost. And on the porch of the cabin, a woman, her son, and a feared outlaw sat watching the sunrise. No longer alone, no longer afraid. Their story wasn't one of survival anymore. It was one of belonging. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales every week. Your support keeps the fire of storytelling alive.